Hi there, I'm Georgia from Peking Pastels. In this segment of our Learn to Sew series, we will be assembling our pants. Now that you've done the side seams and you've finished them, depending on which view of these pants you're doing, you can either do the elastic waistband or you can finish the bottoms. I'm doing view B with the contrasting band at the bottom, so that's the next section I would like to do. And then we can finish the elastic waisting next. So I'm going to take my contrast band and unpin it. So I've got these two pieces, and I'm going to sew them end to end on the short side. I'm going to sew that seam and finish it on both pieces. And then we'll come back and pin them to the pants. Here we have the contrasting band. It is folded right sides together, and I'm going to sew this short seam on the end with the 1/2 inch seam allowance this time, and then I will finish the seam as we had before. The 1/2 inch line on my machine is the edge of my presser foot, so I'm going to make sure that this raw edge is following along the edge of the presser foot. Okay, here's the contrast. I've sewn the side seam there. I'm going to turn it inside out and press that seam open. Remember, pressing means to just iron straight down, don't move it around, and use a dry heat. I don't know if you can tell on the camera, but red fabric sometimes gets darker when it's ironed, and that's totally normal. It's nothing to worry about. Okay, now, there's my seam pressed open over here. I am going to fold this in half so that these two raw edges meet each other, just like this. So fold this seam up so that the top and the bottom touch. There's the top of my seam and the bottom of my seam touching. I have folded my contrast bands in so that both sides have the right side fabric facing out. You can see here are my raw edges, and that's a tube. I've done both of them, and I'm going to press them. Get a nice crisp edge. And then I'm going to take my pants, right side out. You need to turn them right side out. You're going to take your contrast band, turn it around, and fit it right on top of the bottom of your pant leg so that all the raw edges are matching. Like this. And then you'll pin it and sew that seam. Let me pin it really quickly. Here are all the raw edges matching, the pants and the contrast band. And here I like to match my seam lines of the pants and the seam of the contrast together on the inseam. It's purely aesthetic, it's not necessary, but that's what I like to do. And then we're going to pin this all together and sew and finish the seam. Now that we have the contrast band pinned to the bottom of the pant leg, you can see it's a tube inside there. Most machines have a very small area here that you can put the tube over. On mine I have to pull this little leg out. You might have a plate that you have to pull off. But at any rate, fit that around your machine. And I like to start on the inside of the leg, on the inseam, where it's not noticeable. If you can't fit this around your sewing machine, you can pull it up all the way like this, and as you sew, you're just going to have to keep flattening it out little by little as you come to the next section. It's manageable. It's not as easy as putting it around your machine, but you can do it. So I'm just going to fit that right back around my machine and make this last hem. As I sew, this bottom hand here is just pulling the fabric forward, so I have some leeway here. It also gives me a lot of room, space this way, to make sure that my fabric is straight as it gets to the needle. Back stitch, and then we finish the seam. I have made the seam, putting the contrasting band onto the pants. What I'm going to do now is fold it down with the seam allowance pressed towards the pants, so up, and I'm going to press it. Now, to make it look really nice and professional, we can top stitch right along this edge right here, using the seam line as a guideline on our presser foot. And I'll go ahead and do that, and then we will be done with the pants, and we'll move on to the elastic waistband. Now I need to top stitch. I have pressed my seam allowances toward the pant, so they're underneath the black side of this seam. And I'm going to sew right along that crease on the black fabric. And it depends on your presser foot, but I have a little check mark in the middle of my foot I like to use as a guide. I lay that right down on the crease and make sure I'm always following that, and so it's a really nice top stitching line. Yours might be the edge of your foot or some other line on your foot. Just find a place that you can easily see that you can use as a guide. And I just carefully sew all the way around. Top stitching is stitching that you do on top of a seam you've already done. It catches the seam allowance and the fabric on top. It makes the seam stay flat through washing and washing.